And the countdown is finished. Welcome, everybody, to the BizDad Podcast. Thank you so very much for coming in. Today, I'm looking forward to chatting with Eric Farewell. We just had probably one of the longer pre-call chats that I've had in a while, so I'm looking forward to digging in now that we're recording and getting all this on record. But Eric, if you can, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about you, your family, and your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Eric Farewell, pretty easy name. I think I'm the only one in the U.S., at least the U.S. There's not many of us by that name. I'm 39, just turned a couple weeks ago, or I guess a week ago. I've been in business since I was 13, working since I was 7. I've been blessed to have multiple different career paths, different businesses, from building them, buying them, etc. I have a wife of 15 years. Her name is Nell, and then 3 kids, August, Arthur, and Eloise, that are 9, 11, and 13. We moved to Austin, Texas 2 years ago to develop a stronger community, and we used to live just down the street from you in Lake Wales, Florida. So super happy to be here. I love the introductions that our mutual friends have made, and when I sit down and I see your hat, I'm like, wait, I know that logo. I know what you like to do. It's super fun. So glad to be here, man.
Welcome to the BizDad Podcast, where we dive into the melding of fathership and entrepreneurship with your host, the original BizDad himself, Adam Labar. Adam is a Christian, a former Air Force officer, a dad to 3 amazing kids, a coach, a real estate investor, and a business owner. On this podcast, he'll explore the unique journeys of amazing dads who are striving for greatness in both business and family. So whether you're a dad who is an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply a man striving to be a better dad, get ready as the BizDad brings you conversations to inspire, challenge, and equip you to be a better dad and entrepreneur. And now, here's Adam.
Yeah, as you've got a little aviation license plate in the back. I've got like the pilot magazine that I almost never read sitting back here. There's a pile of them. I just never have time to open them up. I should put them by the toilet. Maybe then I'll have time. But anyways, Eric, I'm really looking forward to kind of digging in. One of the places I like to start usually is kind of learning a little bit about your background. You told me a small amount, but kind of what was it like for you growing up? One of the specific things I really like to dig into, as comfortable and as deep as you're able or wanting to go, is kind of your parents, your dad especially. One of the things as a dad yourself and somebody in front row dads who obviously wants to be a more involved dad, one of the things that I've realized is the more that we understand about our dads and why they did the things they did and why we thought the things we thought about our dads, it helps us become better dads. So I'd love to hear your thought process on who your dad is. Tell me what it was like for you with him growing up, and kind of tell a little bit of story behind that.
Great question. It's something I spent a lot of time thinking through. I was born into a family of entrepreneurs. My great-grandmother founded a restaurant to be able to feed her family through the Depression. That restaurant existed for 78 years. After my parents got married, my mother started a business selling books to homeschoolers. And quickly, my dad stepped in and helped as well, and that business lasted for nearly 30 years. So I grew up in this home where it was feast and famine, and they were doing their best. Grew up in a very fundamentalist Christian home. They read some interesting books that they thought they learned the best way to parent, which was a pretty harsh parenting style of belief that your children are evil when they're born and that you have to whip it out of them, which I don't agree with. And I actually have a really hard time with pieces of my childhood, which is complicated because when I was 17, 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, I crashed an airplane. And I broke my back and I lost almost all of my childhood memory. So over the last 22 years now, I have done the work. I've started the deep therapy sessions, the body work, the meditation work, the breath work, all these different pieces, which have brought back pieces of my childhood memories. And what I thought was a really happy, wonderful, healthy childhood wasn't. To this day, my parents have done the best they can, and they're wonderful people. They truly are wonderful people. But there's a difference in the way that I raise my kids in that I believe that they're fundamentally good. Mm-hmm. And that certainly there are things that people can do that are horrible, but they were born good. And so as much as I admire my father and for many years wanted to be just like him, and we're very similar in a lot of ways, I've learned a lot about grace and grace in strength and how to create a home that my nervous system is the regulator of. And as I learned to have that self-control, to understand my own nervous system, to understand who I am and what I need, to have clear boundaries, to have absolute clarity, to not have to have corporal punishment be the end-all be-all, to not make my kids believe they're evil. I'm certain that I'm screwing my kids up in many other ways. But they live in a loving home. And my home growing up was a loving home, but it was a home where the primary emotion that was accepted or expected was anger. And that's not the way I want to live. I had a conversation yesterday. I think the last time I yelled, aside from like we're driving and the kids are wild and I have to like calm it down so I don't crash the car because I'm actually like overloaded. It's been months.
Yeah.
You know, like since I yelled at a child, and I'm still like, I feel shame even admitting that, but like it's been months because my nervous system regulates my home's nervous system. Everyone else in my family feels what I feel. Mm-hmm. And I've learned to control that through all the different tools that I've used over the last 7 years of learning to know myself and to love myself. And I'm still unlearning those patterns that I gained as a child, and kind of the more things that come to light, the more I'm like, man, that really wasn't okay. You know, when your therapist looks at you and go, whoa, buddy, that's not normal. You know?
Yes, it is. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's totally fine, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I highly respect my father and my mother, deeply appreciate the intentionality that they put into raising us, homeschooling 5 kids, traveling 6 months a year in a motorhome to make a living, having high highs and extraordinarily lows, and also recognize that it's not the path that I would want for my family.
Yeah, it's one of the, like, I'm amazed that because you never know what these stories are going to bring up when you ask somebody about their upbringing, you know, and it always seems to be, you know, and you started this off by saying that you've put a lot of thought into this, right? And you've been working through it and all of that stuff. And you could tell the folks that have actually thought about it and worked through it and the ones who haven't when you're having the conversation, and how drastically it changes how you choose to raise your kids. Right.
Oh, for sure.
Because I often say, and I think it's pretty, I'm not the only one who says this. I'm not, that wise, but, you're either running from your childhood or you're running towards your childhood. Like you're either going to repeat what you saw. There's that image of it's the circular image of a father beating his child and the child growing up and then beating it. And it just kind of goes around in a circle. You just have to be the person that escapes that if that's the case. Right. My dad was one of those that escaped that. Like he was not, like, thankfully he did not do that with me, right? He ended up, and this is where I say, you have now, you're actually benefiting from what they thought was right, so that you can now do what you think is right, as opposed to just repeating what you've seen. You obviously put in the effort for it, but you had a life experience, and another thing that I like to talk about is like your wireframe. We look at our life through a wireframe of all of our previous experiences, right? So like when you're building a website, you build a wireframe, and then the rest of your web pages look like that same wireframe, and then you just build out the next thing. So when I look at my next web page in life, I've built it off of the previous wireframe until something comes in and garbles it up, and I need to redo my entire wireframe. And you had a plane crash that started that, but yet, what was it that you started doing in your life after you had this crumpled up because you had to rewrite your wireframe, but some of it started coming back? How was it that you started to work through that to be able to say, hey, I'm not sure I understand how this went? Or what questions did you end up asking? Or what things did you end up hearing that triggered you to really start to dig deep into that and analyze your childhood?
I think it's a great question. Again, the challenge for me with this perspective is I go on the make me sound really smart side, which is I believe that our perspective is controlled by our memory, and our memory has been scientifically proven to be flawed.
Yes, terribly flawed.
So all that we really have are the lies we tell ourselves. That is our reality, right? So that's one piece of it. The second piece is, what do we actually feel in our somatic body? What does our whole body, nervous system, everything feel and understand to be true? What do we believe is truth? For me, there's been a lot of different events in my life that have led me to question what my truth is, to question what reality is. And that sounds pretty wild as a statement, but the truth is, when you have a major loss, when you have something that goes away, for me, I was supposed to go to the Air Force. I wanted your path. I wanted to fly jets. I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. I wanted to be a Thunderbird. Like all those things were my dream my whole life. And in one morning, waking up underneath an airplane that's crashed into the wall of a hangar with me hanging onto the outside of it, covered in blood with 5 broken vertebrae, all of a sudden everything changed.
Yeah.
And everything changed again in 2018 when my brother died. He was 22. He had a baby and he was in a car accident, drunk driving on his way home from a bar, like stupid, didn't wear a seatbelt, right? It didn't change everything overnight, but it shifted my perspective of what success was, because I thought my job as a son was to do better than my parents. And for me, that was largely financially, because that's what I understood. Starting a business so early, I knew how to make money. I built all these different companies and I was good at it. But the main reason I was good at it was because my ego is so fed. Every time I go into the office, all my employees would ask questions. All my clients would ask questions. I knew the answer to every question. I was the man. I was receiving the love I didn't get as a kid. And what I was losing was a relationship with my wife, a relationship with my kids. And I hit this moment of I'm either getting a divorce or I have to change.
Yeah.
And of course, I spent the decade prior to that believing that my wife was the problem. Like, oh, honey, you need to go get therapy. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. Of course, I'm like this insufferable idiot who's not taking any responsibility. And we finally started doing the work. She went to therapy. I went to therapy. Went together. We started going to couples retreats. We started learning somatic work. We started learning meditation. And suddenly this closed off, challenged relationship where I'm working 100 hours a week to feel like I'm the man started to flower. And I realized that I don't need another comma. I've built multi-million-dollar businesses and that's great. And I don't care about it anymore. All I really care about is having a wife and kids who actually understand who I am and that they see that I'm learning me every day. Yeah. I'm learning to be more connected, to be more present, to be more engaged. And there's constant work to do. But that was my turning point, was realizing that it was either all going to burn and I was going to be alone, and still understanding it, like knowing like that conscious part of my head, oh, I can get all these girls. But then the actual conscious part of my head going, you're going to be so freaking lonely. Yeah. And you're just going to work more. You're just going to push harder and it's not going to matter. So thankfully I woke up and the world changed for me, and I did a lot of work, and today the life we have is such a delight. I just am so honored and blessed.
That's phenomenal to hear. Yeah, it is always funny how it's always everybody else's fault for our problems, right? And the issues that are going on in life. I halfway jokingly say that to my wife. I said, I can always figure out a way why it's your fault, not mine. I will always, like, my brain is preset to figure out and I think all of us are in a way, right? Your brain is either preset to take everything on your shoulders, or your brain is preset to pass everything off. And it takes our strength and abilities to, and in humility, if we could find it, to realize that no, like sometimes it is other natures, but it's like Jocko Willink, right? Where he's extreme ownership. It rained today. My fault. Like I should have packed better, right? Whatever it is, what can I take that I can own to improve my stake in the future? And, so how long ago did you say it was that you and your wife kind of changed? Was that 7 years ago? You said something like that?
Everything started in 2018, 2019, starting this personal development journey where, 5-6 years now. Okay.
So what, your oldest kid is 13, is that right? Yeah, 13. So you have a 13 and 11-year-old. So they, the 9-year-old was around, but probably doesn't remember much from that time, right? Did your kids notice a difference as well? Do you think that your kids could see and feel what was going on? I think feel is probably something they definitely did, even if we don't realize it. But could they see and express a difference in you guys to be able to say, hey, I like what's going on here type of thing?
There's no question. Because I truly believe that we marry the person that's most designed to trigger us and to polish the turd, as it were, designed to activate our nervous systems, make us angry, make us hurt. That this person is designed to make us a better human, and to become a better human, you have to do one of two things: experience disgust, so you want to create a change, or experience grief. And oftentimes that grief is brought on by our partner. And then we have kids that polish the edges that our spouse didn't, right?
Yes, of course.
So during those years, there's a lot of time where we were activated, where the marriage is in a rupture, we're frustrated, there's a lot of blame, there's a lot of stories, there's a lot of history. And then to come back together from that place to a place where now it's so peaceful that even when either one of us is having a really hard time, there's that codependence is gone, where I have to make sure she's okay for me to be okay. It doesn't exist anymore. She can have her own experience. I can have my own experience. And while we're certainly there for each other and we can hold space, we can create a container for those emotions to be safe, it doesn't affect who we are anymore.
Yeah.
Which is a huge difference, because I don't want that for my kids. I don't want my kids to be in a relationship where their happiness is based upon the happiness of their partner. Mm-hmm. I mean, don't get me wrong. You want to have empathetic, gracious relationships, period, but not so much that your entire world is riding on the happiness of your partner. That was my life. That was my world.
Yeah, and I think that's an unhealthy way to go through life, right? And especially, and you may not have used the word on purpose, but or at least in the way that I'm thinking about it in my brain. But happiness comes and goes so often and so easily that if we're relying on happiness to get us through, anyways, instead of a joy, right, or even contentment is better than happy, right? To me, right? Because if I'm content, and I don't mean content like, oh no, I'm just content. Like, I mean like, hey, like life is going well. Like I'm content with where we're going. Doesn't mean I don't want to grow. Doesn't mean I want to do anything. But if I'm relying on being happy every day, boy, am I going to be miserable, right? Because every time I'm not happy, I just fall apart, you know?
Right. And I say this for many people, they will start down the journey of growing and becoming a better human, getting closer to who they really are, and they'll discover this thing called gratitude. Mm-hmm. And gratitude and faith are very closely linked, almost the same word, right? Fear and faith are antithesis of each other. So when we live in fear, or we live in that victim mentality, we live in a place where we don't have gratitude, suddenly discovering that gratitude can control, because when faith and gratitude cannot coexist with fear. So suddenly you start dabbling with this word gratitude, and you're meditating on it, and you're thinking about all the things you're grateful for, and it pushes away the fear. But what I think is the next phase, what I'm working through this year, has been, how do I play with bliss? I want a bliss practice where I am beyond joy. There is bliss in every moment. There's bliss in the hard times. Yeah. To have the opportunity to have a hard time is a blissful thing, right? Mm-hmm. And it sounds ridiculous, but I love getting these deeper ideas, because they start to change my language. They start to change how I present to the world. They start to change how all the negative self-talk that we have in our head that we by nature have been programmed to do for so long to keep ourselves safe, doesn't have to exist anymore. Not in a place of gratitude and or bliss. It doesn't need it.
Yeah, I love it. And I mean, to your point, we can be blissful in the negative, in the hard parts, because without the hard parts, what do we have to compare the blissful points to, right? So Ben Shapiro talks about how he's like, when you're by yourself, right, and you're a single guy, you have these ups and downs, right? And then you get married and you have these higher highs and these lower lows, and most of them are around your spouse. To your point, right? They have a way to get off some of those sharp edges, which sometimes makes us really high or really low. And then when you have kids, it goes even higher and even lower. Those higher highs really come from your kids and the joy that you see, and those real lows go from what did I do? Why did I have kids? Like, I don't understand, But you could be blissful in all of those moments and realize what a blessing it is to have kids to be angry at right now, right?
And then you add a few dozen employees in there that you're responsible for their life too.
Let's not get to employees. Goodness gracious, yes.
I wasn't going to say anything about that time in Ohio and what happened in '94. If you guys just Google Adam LeBar,
don't
right?
Google it. Don't Google it. I actually may have been in Ohio in '94. So
now I hope you were, because that would be so much funnier.
Yeah. Oh man. So I want to go into the business side of the house. You said you started some businesses early. Tell me a little bit about how that kind of going from homeschool, plane crash. How did this business stuff start for you?
Yeah. So actually, it ties back into the first question you asked. When I was 3 years old, I went for my first airplane ride. I was born on a property that had a runway on it.
Nice.
And so my grandfather flew in World War II. My uncle flew for United. My mom celebrated her 16th birthday. My grandmother had her pilot's license. My cousins all fly. Wow. Family of aviators, right? 3 years old, I get in the backseat of a Bellanca Super Viking, and I'm doing barrel rolls over the Orange Grove, and I can still remember how it smelled. And I felt so free. Like, I was not afraid. I felt like I was a bird. And when I was 7, I discovered this thing called an ultralight. Mm-hmm. And ultralights, you didn't have to wait till you were 16 to solo. And the crazy thing for me was at 7, 16 seemed like a billion years from 7. Of course, we now know at our age it's not. It happens really fast, but it felt like a billion years. So I went to work at my grandparents' restaurant, and I did every job you can imagine, I won't even go into details, but every job you can imagine at a hotel country inn. And I worked full time and I saved money. And when I was just before my 13th birthday, I bought my first airplane kit to build. And that's when I discovered that kids who have ADHD should not build airplanes. We're not designed for it. We can do lots of things really well. Building airplanes is not one of them. Legos, like that's about the top echelon, right? So 2 weeks later, I put it up for sale on this new thing called the internet. And this was 1999, and it sold. And the guy I bought it from said, "Wait, you sold that on the new thing, the interwebs?" And he had a hanger full of stuff, and he said he'd give me 10% if I could help him sell it. So I asked him to make it 20, and I launched a company called Aviation, and we sold airplanes on the internet from the age of 13 to when I broke my back. And It was a crazy thing because I didn't think anything of it. I was just grew up in an entrepreneurial family where like, this is what we do. And I went to a marketing conference when I was 13 or 14, and people started hearing that I was selling airplanes on the internet, like Cessnas and Pipers and Beechcrafts and Gulfstreams, like whatever, like you name it. And they were like, you have to tell your story. So now I started a speaking career at 14, 15 years old. You know, first conferences, I wasn't speaking. I found mentors, like phenomenal marketing mentors that changed my life forever. But within a few years, I'm speaking. I'm going around the country speaking at these conferences and selling products. And it was awesome, you know, in one sense, and also really not, you know. So because I was building this online empire that really didn't feel tangible. And my father always said, do an honest day's work, do an honest day's work. And I witnessed him with his brick and mortar and his tangible empire. And it was, like I said earlier, feast or famine. Lots of money in the summers when we're selling stuff. And by the time Christmas came around, like one year I got toilet bowl cleaner for Christmas. Another year I got toenail clippers. Like it was, you know, real fabulous Christmases, much like we have in our home today. Not really. But it was definitely an interesting journey to be around people who were generating tens of millions of dollars a year selling hope. And I did that till I was 23. I got married after 9 months of dating my wife. And we were in Wimberley, Texas, in a hot tub the Monday after an event. And I just done the best I'd ever done. I sold the heck out of that room. And she turns to me and she says, "Eric, you're so stressed out. You can't walk." And she was right. My pain levels were very high at the time, and they continue to be throughout my life. But she said, "I don't care about the money. What if you just do what you love?" And I loved two things at the time. I loved flying and photography. I had a photography business. Done well. We had launched a blog that had a couple 100,000 readers a day back in the early days of Zanga. So I was going around the world shooting weddings when I wasn't selling marketing products. And I just doubled down. And we went from good income to nothing. And that turned into a YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel turned into a paramotor flight school, which is a little fan you put on your back and you run into the sky. And because I am who I am and the way I like to think is I saw the hole in the marketplace for professionalism, for kindness, for a lack of I mean, at the time, like all my competitors just made YouTube videos talking about how crap the other person's product was. It was comical. And so I just came on and just said, everyone's products are pretty good. And people trusted me. And so we professionalized it and we grew it. Now that we have the largest paramotor school in the world, we train the SEALs, we train Delta, we train some of the most incredible operators I've ever met, plus civilians of all shapes and sizes. And that's in Lake Wales, Florida. And that business is, I retired from about 3.5 years ago. And I still own 100% of it. It's wonderful that it's doing its thing and its mission is continuing, which the mission is to help people overcome their fears through flight so they can be present with who they truly are. And we watch people change their life after they fly because something in you switches. Yeah. So have that business. I have a couple of production companies that support that for our YouTube channel. And we also have an aircraft racing series that we purchased in 2022, which is like bush planes racing to see who can have the shortest takeoff and shortest landing. Nice. And it sounds ridiculous, but we had 87.1 million people watch last year. And that's phenomenal. And to be honest, man, the events are just the most fun thing in the world. Like I came into it as a volunteer, and right now we have over 800 annual volunteers. We have one employee, and we have these events all over the country, and we just have a blast. It's wonderful. This wonderful little tiny segment of aviation. So that's the life. After all those years of working so hard, I finally just wanted to release the ego and be done being the man and be present with my kids and my wife. And so I did. About 2 years ago, we said, we don't like Florida. Why do we live here? And in end of March, we came to visit Austin, Texas, because I'd been here for a Front Row Dads retreat. We had a bunch of friends here. 5 weeks later, we packed 3 kids, 2 guinea pigs, 2 dogs into our truck and drove here. And we've been here ever since. And it's just been the most incredible transition. And then about a year ago, I was on a friend's podcast like this, and I told my story. And at the end of the podcast, he ends it and he goes, Eric, how did you do that? Can you teach me? I said, how to do what? He's like, you own 4 companies and you don't work. And I said, I mean, I could teach you. It's not hard. It just, you have to ask the right questions. And so I started consulting, and I didn't think I'd ever go back to work, and I'm still keeping it 4 hours maximum per week. Me and Tim Ferriss are aligned in this, and I'm loving it. It's changed. It's been such an incredible journey to shift from mentee to mentor.
Yeah.
And the amount of imposter syndrome and believing that I didn't have something to offer. But when I see the results that my clients are having, it's mind-blowing to see that my life experience can affect not just me. And it's really been such an honor. So that's where we are now. I'm writing a second book, launching our first group coaching program next month. And
that's awesome.
Just living it up, man. So
that's
happy.
really cool. Yeah. The business consulting is something that I've been talking about doing for a while, between my military experience and then my business experience. It's like, man, I'd love to be able to help folks. I am not very good at your day-to-day operations. You don't want me as the guy running the day-to-day operations. I've tried that. Doesn't work so well. I'm a guy that's when bullets are flying overhead, literal or figurative, I'm your guy. I can manage that. I can handle that. But man, oh man, you put me in a normal thing and I need to follow up on tasks and do all that. I just can't, that's not my thing. But
I have people for that.
You bring me in and fix things, I can fix things like the best of them. It's so much fun to just kind of work through people's things. And when you're sitting on the other side, and you obviously know this very well, sitting doing what you're doing, when you're sitting on the other side, like the problem seems so much easier to solve than when you're in the middle of it, and it's the clarity that it provides you to be on the outside looking in. So.
And I'll just really quickly say too, that my main purpose for doing this, I call it somatic business coaching, because I realize that what's more important to me than anything is not the business succeeding. The business needs to succeed enough on its own without the founder having to do everything.
Yes.
So that the founder can have space so they can start to do the work on themselves.
Yeah.
Because most of us never will make space for us. The number one realization that men have in men's groups, and I've been in many of them, is that they don't love themselves. Mm-hmm. Hard stop. They do not love themselves. They contempt themselves. They judge themselves. They are afraid of themselves. They don't love themselves. And we can only receive the love that we can give ourselves. We can only give the love that we can give ourselves. So if you think you love your kids, but you don't love yourself, you don't actually love your kids. It's a transactional love. Mm-hmm. And that's not real love. So creating the space for humans, men, women, I have clients of both genders, to really witness their business doing good for the world, but they're not the ones doing it. Yeah. It's a wild transition. And for me to make that transition, it cost me millions of dollars a year that I don't make because I'm not the closer at my main business anymore. And that's just a cost of life. And I would do it every day. Like, there's no question. Every afternoon I go out and set up a fire on our deck, and I sit there with my wife, and we have no technology, and we have conversations. And the fact that is my one thing I have to do today. I had a conversation with you, a conversation with a friend, and then I've got to go set up a fire. That's my day. It's Wednesday, January 15th.
That's rough. I mean, that's tough. Yeah, I don't know how you handle that.
Oh, it's horrible. I did drop the kids off at school this morning. It's a 6-minute drive.
Yeah, that steps it up. Never mind, I get it now. Yeah. No, it's I was talking to somebody recently because I've been a real estate guy for a while, and finding real estate right now to buy that's cash flowing has been an interesting feat the last couple of years. So I really have been on this. I want to go buy businesses, and I try to tell folks. I said I would so much rather buy a business that's has like an SDE of like $500,000. Give half of that to a solid operator. Like, I will run it to the ground for the first 3 to 6 months, really know the thing inside and out, to know what that business needs and know the right operator to hire, then hire that and give up a majority of it. I don't care. Give up a majority of that cash flow to then sit here and only have to manage it for a couple hours a week, because that to me makes so much more sense. Like, it's, I love being a homeschool dad. I love being able to bring my kids on trips. I love being able to, I can't wait for my wife to retire this year, but I love being able to, spend time with her whenever she is not working 14 hours a day. I want to build that life that you're talking about, where it's like this is what's, you know, that 4-hour work week. I mean, I'm going to want more than 4 hours if I'm honest, just because that's like, I itch for that from time to time, but maybe I won't when I get to that point. I don't know. But
well, you replace the work that fills your ego cup, that makes you feel like you're striving and building and growing.
Yeah.
You replace that with relationships. You replace that with deep community with other people that you can trust that will grow. Dude, and I did too. No, seriously, 2 years ago, I'm sitting in Florida on our deck with our fire and realizing that the only friends I had in town, I had one friend, my brother, who I hardly ever saw, and then 30 employees who I love to death. They're wonderful people. They're my closest friends. And we'd have them over 3 nights a week. We'd have employees at our house, right? But sometimes you have to fire your friends, and then that's not a real relationship.
Yeah.
So we moved to Austin because there was community of like-minded humans who thought like we did, who did life. And mind you, most of them are still working a lot. Most of them are entrepreneurs. They're not in the same state, but we can actually have a conversation. So my time like literally is filled with deep conversations with people who I respect instead of working and striving. And it's a whole different game because now they're amplifying what I need to learn.
Yeah, I just this morning I was told you before we started recording that I'm in GoBundance and we have these GoPods, the small, you know, accountability groups. And I was telling them this morning, like the only friends I have are inside of GoBundance. I don't I mean, I've got obviously other friends that from like high school and stuff that I'll stay in contact with. I'll go visit them. They'll visit me. But I mean, like that I'll talk to on a daily basis. Very few. Like I don't do well with the connections. And I've always tried to figure it out. And my thought process was always that it was probably because I was a military brat turned military guy, right? So I was gone every 2 years as a kid and then gone every 2 years as an adult. So I never really connected with folks. And it's always been a struggle for me to sit down and connect with folks on that level. Like I just, and, you know, I'm not a very, I'm very, analytical. You know, me and Spock get along really well. Like it's only logical. It's all like, that's it, you know? So it's always been tough for me to connect on that. But the second I do, like, I feel like waterworks come out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden, like you could turn on tears out of nowhere. And it just never made sense to me. Like, why is it that easy for that to come out of, like, I could go from like, all hard things happening, things going on, and then all of a sudden, like one conversation, and I'm like, "What happened to me?" And I'm assuming that it's because I keep pushing all that nonsense away, you know, and it's buried in there somewhere. So,
no, I'm right there with you, dude.
Oh, I've got kiddos coming to say hello. Do you want to now?
See, I told you the voice is going to come out. I don't know which button he pushed, but
it's beautiful. This is the true Adam voice.
Yeah, this is the chipmunk. Here it is.
Yeah. And now, large robots.
Robots
work.
work.
See, there we go. There's my oldest. There's Adam.
What's up, buddy?
All right, let's turn
that off so I don't sound too gracious. No more. He just censored me. Wasn't even saying bad words, you little punk.
Can you imagine, like, if he could do that in real life all the time?
Goodness.
Just every once in a while, just beep.
If he could do that in real life, he would censor me constantly. I'm 97% certain of it.
If you guys haven't watched Bluey as a family,
oh no, we do.
Okay, so we did that. That was our break this summer. Was the Bluey break? We'd never watched Bluey, and it became like every night after dinner we're gonna watch an episode of Bluey. And I'm waiting for that to come out in an episode where they, instead of it being like the dance mode, it's now it's the beep, beep, beep. And it'll be, as they're hitting puberty, they're just like, no, Dad, you can't.
Done. Yeah. But it'll be like The Simpsons. They'll never go through puberty. They're always going to stay the same age. They're never going to get old.
I don't know. The last season, they really started pushing this idea that they're going to transition. They're going to grow, which I'm really excited about. Yeah.
Interesting. We're not like, we've watched quite a bit of Bluey, especially over at my brother-in-law's house, but it doesn't happen a whole lot. I mean, they're running around the house, and once in a while Ninja Turtles will come on, but that's or anything Marvel. Like the boys love superheroes. So
just really quick to go back to the Friends thing.
Yeah.
So we traveled 6 months of the year from the time I was 3 to 18. So I never really had a sense of home. I never had friends aside from my cousins. And then from 18 to 23, I lived in 27 different cities because I was just trying to find what felt like home. Then I got married. We planned to move to California. We found out we were pregnant. Stayed in Florida for 11 years, 12 years, and started to build the idea of community. Like where I was a regular at all the restaurants in town, all those kind of things. But once you find your people, whether it's your GoPod or whatever it might be, like for me, it was this Front Row Dads group, finding men who were aligned on the same values. It just became so obvious. It's like, well, of course I'm going to go live there. It costs us 6 times what we paid to live in Florida, right? It's not cheap, but it's worth it. like it's worth it to make that investment, not just in myself and my wife, but even more so for our kids who went from not having friends because their parents didn't have friends to they have the most incredible social life. Like it's comical. Like, all right, how many birthday parties are we going to this weekend? You know, it's one of those things. And I wouldn't change it for the world. It's such a blessing. So I hope you find your people that are really easy to be with, and maybe you'll move to Austin someday.
Yeah, you never know. So I think we're probably going to settle down here in Florida when she retires. My intention is to sell the house, buy a camper, and travel the country for a couple months with the family.
We've done that. It's a blast.
Spend time as a family. Just like we very rarely get to spend more than a day together, just us. So I'd love to go check out all the national parks, go travel around, so if anybody's listening and they have a place they want me to stop, let me know. I'd love to go figure out any place that maybe not, it's off the beaten path somewhere. Don't care. Like we just buy Class A.
I can build you an entire map, brother. This is my specialty, and Glacier's the best national park. It shocked me how good it is.
Yeah, I want to get up even because I'd like to drive all the way up through Canada and up into Alaska, and then on the way back down, stop in Banff and check that out, and then work our way back down. There's so many places.
I mean, again, when I said this is my thing. Literally 19 years old, motorcycle, Tennessee to Pennsylvania, totaled a bike, broke my leg, flew to Florida, bought another bike, rode that to Alaska, then to San Diego, then back to Tennessee. Like I lived that.
Nice.
And I can tell you the best ways I would love, like if you ever want to go for like a 5-hour podcast on cool places to go on a motorcycle or in an RV, especially with kids, like there's a spot in Missoula, Montana where you can camp for free and they have the sleeping goats, like the goats, the fainting goats, and they have their own honey. They make their own whiskey. Like it's you're in heaven. You're like 5 minutes from downtown Missoula, and we had a 42-foot country coach towing an 18-foot trailer, so it's a big footprint, and it just worked. It was awesome. So yeah, tons of things like that for you.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, that's my type of thing right there. I would drag the dirt bikes around in the 4-wheeler and have a good time as a family and just love life for a little while and not have anything holding us back anywhere, doing anything, just family. Because I can run my business from anywhere. Doesn't matter to me.
What if you could do it without running your business?
Oh yeah, even better, right? Yeah.
This is our very first vacation ever. Since our honeymoon, we went to Alaska for a month. I didn't talk to my team. I didn't reply to emails. I didn't open my laptop for 30 days.
Wow.
Right. And that's the magic of building it right and having the right mission and the right values and their team believing in what you're doing. And our teams are incredible. So you could do it without even thinking about your business.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong. I would think about it. So I'd have to work on the not thinking about it part. Yeah. But, we'll see how that goes. But
that's what real presence is. Like that's when you can detach from everything else that doesn't matter as much as your family. That's true presence, right? If you're trying to have a conversation with your wife and you're thinking about the employee you need to fire, or you're thinking about the rents that haven't been collected, whatever it may be, that's not real presence. That's not giving the gift of who you are to your family. That's giving a projection of who you kind of are. I don't know. That's like that was just my realization. It's like, if I don't go all in and really give it my all, they're only getting a piece of me instead of all of me. And I want my wife and my kids to have all of me.
I left the military because I saw the writing on the wall. Like I saw so many dads that lost their family because they were traveling all the time. Sometimes because the government just tells you where to go. And sometimes it was because they raised their hand and said, oh, I want to go. And they were running away from something. But I told myself I can't do that. I've wanted to be a dad since I was like 13 years old. So I told myself there's no way that I could sit here and continue on the military career while watching my kids grow up on pictures I receive from daycare or from school or from wherever. I was like, I can't keep doing this. Thankfully, my wife did not and does not have as terrible of a travel schedule as I did. I was gone constantly. So like I did not want to be a dad that was like, my son's first birthday was via iPhone from Africa. It's like, all right, bud, like happy birthday. We'll love watching you smash your cake from a choppy iPhone with terrible internet in Africa that keeps freezing. Thank you. And it was like, this can't be a trend. I can't make this be something that I do.
I missed 9 of my son's birthdays because of my business. 9 of his first 10. And it sounds ridiculous. Like we're at a place now where he travels with me a lot and stuff, but like I realized that I booked a flight when you get in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing, the universe starts throwing really cool stuff at you, like crazy. I had a conversation, supposed to be a half hour, turned into an hour and a half. We're walking to the car, and he's like, it's a Friday. He's like, hey, next Friday I'm going to Utah. You want to come? Yeah. And he's going to Powder Mountain, which Reed Hastings just bought. So Netflix CEO, they bought 120,000 or so acres up there. And it turns out that my friend owns a lot on the mountain. I didn't know.
Nice.
And the next thing I know, I'm wake surfing with Reed Hastings. Right? I'm like, what's happening, right? The service level is unbelievable. I have been in a lot of really wonderful, fancy, special places, and that was like, there's 70 property owners there and their families, and there's more staff than there are property owners.
Wow.
The chef's incredible. Like, it's this crazy experience, and I get to Sunday night, and I go, tomorrow's my son's birthday, and I won't get home until like 8. I just bought a flight, flew out that night.
Yeah.
Now it's that important. Like, there's no chance. And he didn't care. I mean, he was turning 13. He's like, oh, whatever, Dad. But I cared.
And he'll care later, right? He doesn't realize he'll care later, but he will. He'll remember one way or another, whether it's a true memory and like, oh, I don't like you, Dad, for missing that, or whether it's just what you do. You just miss kids' birthdays, no big deal. But you're setting the trend for what he believes is what should happen in the future, and if we can represent what it is, and that's like if you would have asked my son when he came in here, what is my job, and he'll tell you, my job is to make him a better man than me, and if I can raise him. And I think that I need to do a better job, especially now that they're getting older, defining what a man is, and maybe not necessarily, I'm hoping I'm defining it by my actions, and not necessarily like putting it down on a piece of paper. By telling him when I'm screwing up and how I can handle things better is also showing him what it means to be a good man. So I should do a good job of writing that down for me so that I know like this is what I'm striving for, not just where, this idea of what a good man is. And I have written on my board over here, it says, be a good man, not just a nice guy, because there's so many nice guys out there that, I don't want my son to be a nice guy. I want him to be a good man.
Well, you're bringing up two things like I have to address them.
Let's do it.
I almost did it earlier. I can't remember what the question was, but there's another element of training yourself to be better is that a lot of what we carry is generational.
Yeah, for sure.
My family, like I know, and I won't out anyone in my family, but like we've all shared the same trauma as many generations back as I can go on both sides of my family. And that ends with me. Yeah. It ends with me because my children will know about it. My children will have a rite of passage that educates them on how to show up differently, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's imperative. And the second piece is the book that I found in 2019 that changed my life so much, which is called No More Mr. Nice Guy, which if you haven't read, highly recommend the book. It is, for me, I got about halfway through the book and I bought a copy for my wife. And then I read the next chapter and I bought a copy for my dad. Then I read the next chapter, I bought a copy for my brother. And I finished the book and I bought a copy for all of my male employees. And then they hadn't even arrived yet and I bought a copy for all my female employees. And I, to this day, still give this book away at least once a week. Yeah. Like, you are the ninth person I recommended it to this week, and it's Wednesday. All right. It's that good of a book. And what's crazy is the author became a friend of mine last year in April, and now he's been to my home multiple times. He lives in Mexico, comes up here to hang out, and we host dinners and talk about great ideas. And this book is a revolution. It was published in 2000, and he's a phenomenal researcher. It's just a really solid book not about the title is No More Mr. Nice Guy, and that is part of it, but it's not like an alpha male like concept. It's more of, hey, here's the way you were programmed by all the feminine women in your life that taught you from an early age in school and all these different things that programmed you to act this way, to not ask for what you actually want, and then to resent when you don't get it, right? All these different stumbling blocks that we have that create nice guy syndrome that really, it hurts our partners. It hurts everyone in our life, because we can do this whether you're male or female. Like every coaching client I have, male or female, gets that book because it's so important. It's all about codependence and understanding how we can show up better for ourselves and for our partners in every area of life. So highly recommend.
I'm 90% certain I've read it, but it was years ago. So I need to jump back into it again. So I wrote it down again to remind me to pull it back up again if I and add it to my thing, because I know that. That was, and it's of no fault of my dad. So hopefully if he hears this, he doesn't take it this way, but I've told him before I was mostly raised by my mom and sisters, right? Because my dad, with his upbringing, where he came from, his involvement as a dad was don't beat your kids. give them a good roof over their head, give them food. And if you're able to, show up to some stuff. But my dad was gone all the time. He was in the military, and then he was a correction officer. So we lived in way upstate New York, and he was down in the city. So like we'd see him, once every few weeks when he would be able to come home in between. So he was sacrificing greatly for the family and doing the best he could with what he had. And I looked at it, and later on in life, I realized how much I was doing a lot of that Mr. Nice Guy stuff. And it was, and still I'll catch myself going into that. And instead of just saying, please do this, I'll be like, can you think about maybe trying to do that? Like, no, like this is what I need. It's what I feel like. This is what needs to happen. And it's not just, again, it's not the alpha male. You need to do these things, all that stuff. It's like, your words mean something, right? The sentence that you're going to say means something.
And stepping into your masculine, like when you step into your masculine, you're doing something that not many men do. Yeah, we can grow a beard, we can look strong, but the reality is to go from that feminine, hey, I kind of need this thing, without even saying it, versus, and that's nothing to knock the feminine. Today, right now, where I am in my journey, I'm in my feminine more than I'm in my masculine. I am dancing with the feminine because I don't have to be masculine. I'm not driving new business. I'm not trying to buy businesses right now unless they pop into my life and I have to, which does seem to happen from time to time. But I don't have to be that masculine driving force. Now, with my wife, I drop in. I polarize because that allows her to stand in her feminine. And then now we have this dance. It's magic. It's all about awareness. It's all about once you understand and are aware of what's there, you can't go back.
I love it. Yeah, I'm gonna. It's back onto my list. The generational thing I want to go back to. What you talked about is I think that, for me, I think that it was my dad is the one who stopped. Like sometimes I like to think that I'm the one who's stopping it, but I have oftentimes have to celebrate my dad for being the one who stopped the nonsense that was going on, that cycle of the crap that was rolling downhill. And it was one of those that I have such a different respect for my father after looking at some of the stuff that he'd been through. And it's like, man, oh man, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have the opportunities to sit here and raise the kids that I'm raising and do the things that I'm doing and run businesses and live in a nice house and all of the stuff that I get to do. And I'm blessed to be able to do. And it's like, man, oh man, I really hope that this continues, because there is that shirt sleeve to shirt sleeves type of thing, that 3 generations and the wealth is gone. And I'm in the process of building that wealth now. And I'm hoping that in 3 generations, we are going down a trend that is phenomenally positive as opposed to dragging people down. And that's what I try to tell people. And it sounds like you're going to be the perfect person to say this to. What good is $100 million business if you lost your family? I'd rather have a $10 million business and all the time in the world with my family. Like it just,
and I would counter that if you're aligning with your purpose and you are really doing the work to be present with who you really are versus the caricature that we put on, that all the different masks that we wear, the $100 million business will happen just by osmosis. Like, yes, there's times you have to work, but once you have even a little bit of money, just hire all of it out. Like, if you have a clear enough vision, you're going to be able to hire really great people for very little money because they believe in your vision too. And the $100 million will come to you. The number of times that I've attracted 5 figures. I mean, I've told this story on the podcast. I started telling this story about Utah, right? I was on the boat wake surfing. I get a call from the Army. Mr. Fairwell, we didn't pay you $81,000, $80,000 in 2019. 3 weeks later, I'm on a boat wake surfing here. The 2 times this year I've wake surfed. Both times I've made over $80,000.
Nice.
The lesson here is wake surf more, make more money. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. I think I'm going to Utah in a couple of weeks, but I don't think I'll be wake surfing because it is January.
Probably not.
But I'll snowboard and see if that does the same thing for me. I'll wait for that phone call that says $81,000 on the way. Maybe you'll call me and just give me $81,000. I don't know. We'll see.
You know what? Just to prove a point. I mean, at this point, you've already told me you need more friends. I've already got a calendar notification that's set up to text you next week to make sure you're reading the book, see how it's going. I'm that guy. I'm the guy who will bully you into friendship whether you like it or not.
I'm totally down with it. I'm the guy that needs to be bullied into it. Otherwise I'll avoid it. Yeah. It's ridiculous. So now that you're in a whole new level of your life, you're feeling good, with where you're at. What has that changed as far as being a father? How has that changed how you show up for your kids on a daily basis? And I like truly show up for your kids on a daily basis.
It's really it's an interesting time. Our oldest is 13 and a half. And I'd say 2 years ago, we wondered is he going to have friends? Because he was very happy to read and to be present with the adults. He was always at the fire with us and all of our employees that would come over and hang out. He was always there. And since he came to Austin and we went to put them in Acton Academy, they had this opportunity to create really beautiful relationships with some great kids. And now he's at the point in his life, which is biologically expected, right? Between the ages of 13 and 22, your child will leave you. And biologically, they're designed to have as much freedom as possible because that's how they procreate and keep the species going. That's a part of a biological phenomenon. That piece of your brain basically shuts off that says you need your parents, and then it comes back on in the mid-20s. That's biology. So it's been really interesting to be witness to him choosing to hang out on Discord with a buddy and talk for hours versus hang out with us. And there's a sense of sadness because he's my buddy. We used to play Call of Duty together every day. That's probably what a lot of parents are probably oh my God, no. But I love Call of Duty. I love video games, and he loves video games, and we got to shoot bad guys together, and that was a really special experience. And not only that, but bringing him into my friend group. One of my buddies is in the Air Force. I play with him almost every day since 2020. I stopped playing video games for 8.5 years because I was working so much. But when I got back to it, I met this guy. We've become real life friends, and I get to watch my then 8, 9, 10-year-old witness how dad plays with friends and watching him change his banter and his, I'm going to bleep myself, his bleep talk is on point. The kid can talk smack like you wouldn't. It's amazing. And those are those moments where most fathers don't get the opportunity to have those interactions. Yeah. Tonight I'm going to a wonderful celebration my friend Garen's throwing, which is it's voices of expression. It's how do you get into your body to sing in public and dance, and he ends up taking a room of 200 people and turning them into an orchestra, and it's beautiful. And I've experienced it in my men's groups when I'm taking my daughter, and I'm so excited to go and let her witness dad in a way that I don't sing, right? To let her see me in a different way. Yeah. So that's what we're doing now, is finding ways that we can meet them where their interests are, and I'm able to. There's plenty of other things. We do the family board meeting, which if you haven't heard of, you should. Great book. Oh, yeah. We do the Disney hug, where it's a solid 1 to 2 minute long hug with each kid every day. Okay. And it's you just melt into each other, and that beautiful co-regulation of nervous systems. So there's lots of little practices like that, but all I really care about is being there when they're upset and being there when they're the happiest.
That's lovely. Yeah, it's I'm going to have to ask you some more questions about the business side, because this is the BizDad, but because really I would love to understand how you built your business to the point where you're able to do all of that. You're able to move out to Austin. You're able to kind of sit there and let it run itself. It's one of those things that I would love to work on doing more in the businesses. So let's kind of talk a little bit about the businesses you still currently own and have owned for a little while, and how you kind of transitioned yourself out of that.
Yeah. So Aviator Paramotor is my primary business. We founded that in 2013. So that's 12 years ago. It is that paramotor flight training business. Also, we have Limitless Paramotor, which is a company that manufactures paramotors. We manufacture the frames in South America and Spain. We assemble everything here in the U.S., actually a veteran manufacturer, so he's a phenomenal machinist and mechanic. Those companies are really they run themselves now, because we have an incredible team. And the reason we have an incredible team is because I got really clear on what the purpose of these businesses were. Over 90% of our employees are former students. They come through the training, they experience it, it's changed their life, they move to Florida. But a big portion of those live in vans down by the river, and actually by the river I mean down by our hangar. But they get bit by the bug. They understand the power of flight, and they want to share it with others. So each of these companies could not run without me if they didn't have such a clear, succinct vision. we also, I mentioned the media companies, and that those are really two separate entities. We have one that supports Aviator, which is the paramotor business, and then the second one supports National STOL, which National STOL, STOL, is our racing series. And that one I have a wonderful business partner in, who's one of the founders. I bought out his partner in 22. And he is the most passionate person in the world about racing STOL. Like, the most passionate. I love it. He lives it. And because of that, we have a strong vision, but we built this around volunteers because it's far from profitable. I mean, we have about $6.5 million in unsold advertising right now. So if anyone's listening to this podcast and markets to men, primarily 35 to 65-year-old white men, I have almost 100 million of them watching my show. And
Very nice.
We are on track this year for probably 120 million. Plus, we have a TV show we've been recording for 2.5 years that has not been sold yet. So anyone who sponsors for the next 24 months, they'll have the opportunity to be integrated deeply into the TV show. We're hoping to sell it to Netflix because it's filmed very much like Drive to Survive. So we get to tell the pilot stories, and it's really it's been a lot of fun. So those are the companies. Aviator, I do nothing. Limitless, I do nothing. The production companies, I do nothing. That was probably the last thing I let go of was reviewing edits before they went out because it touched my artistic side. Yeah. And eventually I was just like, if I'm reviewing these and I'm nitpicking, like, hey, this needs 3 frames cut off the end of it, it's not worth my time to nitpick anymore. Our team in the media department are insanely talented. We stole one from Disney during COVID, and he runs that department now. Just amazing talent. But National STOL, I do still go to the events because I kind of like you, it's really nice to have people you see, even if you don't see them all the time. Yeah. They're like my high school buddies, but they all drink whiskey at the same time. So you sit around a fire and have a glass of whiskey and have a great conversation. And love it. You know, their priorities are mostly just aviation based, and that's a big part of my life. It has been. It's not the piece that I kind of mentioned earlier. I flew because I felt safe. Yeah. Flying for me was the one place I felt safe, and I flew between 100 and 500 hours a year for most of my life. I've got about 6,000 hours in the air, and in the last 2 years since moving to Austin, I've flown on average 6 hours a year because I don't have to fly to be safe in my body anymore. Yeah. And it's a little bit sad because I do have a paramotor here and I have 2 airplanes that aren't getting flown. But I have a feeling you might be able to help me with that. So
yeah, I love flying, but I almost never get to do it. But
well, I got an airplane sitting for you, man. Yeah. We got you covered.
Yeah, it's I told my wife I've been wanting to buy a plane for quite a while, just on a sidetrack. But so I've got my medical coming up this year, and since my last medical, we've found multiple broken vertebrae. I've got sleep apnea now. I've got all this stuff, and it's like, man, oh man, if I better at least wait until I know the FAA says this is okay before I even think about buying an airplane. You know,
there's a lot of tactics that we won't put on the podcast that we can discuss on how to make not to cheat the system in any way, shape, or form, government, if you're listening, but there are ways of applying it correctly because that medical is hyper important. I actually switched to basic med because I stopped flying fast airplanes, like big airplanes. And it was like, you mean I don't have to spend $280 every 6 months to get my medical? Okay.
Yep, and basic med might be the route I end up going later on, but I just have to play around with what planes I can and can't buy after that. So
no more than 6 seats, no more than 250 knots, and unless you're going to spend $4.5 to $5 million, you'll probably be okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at like a Cherokee 6, right? So like that's about all I need. I would love to have a twin engine, get like a Seneca or something like that to fly around because it just is a lot nicer when you're flying a family of 5 around to have something like that. But I would be fine with a 6 as well.
The twin to look at. Just we'll end this tangent soon, listeners. I promise. The twin to look at. I grew up with a twin Comanche, and the twin Comanche will give you 180 knots at 12 to 15 gallons an hour total, which is stupid, and that's why they're so desirable. But it's a great flying airplane. You can put 6 people in it, and like a bag if you put it in your lap. But
that's the problem, is I need to be able to pack a lot of stuff, you know?
Cherokee
when you
6,
have 3 kids, you pack a lot.
Oh, I know, and that's the thing. People don't realize. Having 3 kids, yes, you go from one-on-one to zone defense. That's challenging. But the most challenging part is the fact that now you have to spend like 4 times the amount on an airplane. And I know that doesn't affect everyone with 3 kids, but it should. And I went from like, let's buy, a 172 for $20,000 to we just had the 3rd kid. Okay, I'm going to buy a 185 for $450. And then it's needed $200,000 in avionics on top of that. And now it's like, this just got silly.
And since COVID, the prices for planes has gone ridiculously. Like I looked at my wife, I said, we should have bought it a while. So I was supposed to be a pilot for the Air Force. I started off as an enlisted guy, got out. So I was a dog handler and did a bunch of fun stuff as a dog handler. And then I went back in after college to go be a pilot, and I busted my neck in training. So ended up with a fake disc, another bulging disc in my neck, and not able to fly because they said you can't pull G's. So I said, well, I'm going to fly anyways. And I went and got my private pilots because I had flown, I got picked up to be a pilot for the Air Force, and I had 0 hours of flying. And I went, because I'd always wanted to, just same as you. Like I grew up and I would like watching, growing up on Air Force bases, like I'd watch the jets fly all the time. I really wanted to do this. This is what I was going to do. And then I joined as what are you doing, dog? Go away. Daggum dog. If it's not the kid, it's the dog.
We got a new puppy 3 weeks ago, and the fact that I've not heard her howling in the house right now is a testament to my wife's kindness. We have 3 months. They're all rescues, and so no idea until we did the DNA test, but she's really cute, and like you're a dog handler, so you get this, but I don't sleep great. Like because of my pain. I've got 7 broken vertebrae, 5 herniated discs, and I do a lot of work, like body work, physical therapy every week, like all these different things. But basically I sleep from midnight to 3, and then I roll onto my back and put tennis balls behind my thoracic spine and elevate my legs, and then I can sleep off and on. Dude, this dog comes up and snuggles into my armpit, and my body, like my nervous system just goes flatline. It's 7:40 at night, and I slept for 12 hours and 40 minutes. My wife's like, you never fall asleep before me. So now every night she's like slides the puppy over to me. She's like, you want a little heroin dose? So like, that was a dad joke, but awesome. A heroin dose. Yeah. But I like it. Amazing.
I don't let the dog in the bed, but when I was in Afghanistan with my dog slept in the bed with me all the time, and he would jump up in the bed. I mean, and we're in Afghanistan, so, sometimes it was jump into the cot, sometimes it was lay down on the side of the mountain, whatever it was, he was always next to me.
Don't lie, you were in the Air Force. You had air conditioning. We all know. Yeah. We all know the stories.
So, most of the time, yeah. So as a dog handler, though, especially back in those days, as my dog is climbing up onto my lap, your dog is there to find bombs, right? And when you're fighting a double-fronted war, they send you wherever you need. So when I was in Afghanistan, I was attached to Army Special Forces guys. So we would be doing all sorts of interesting things and staying all sorts of crazy places. And I'm going to have to kick my dog out of here because this is going to go crazy. One second.
It's okay. We're going to sing a hymn while you're gone. We'll make it weird. Or I could tell that story that I found on Google about you.
Sure you could. Yes.
I'm just messing with you.
You may have found a story about me in Iraq. I did, yes. I could hear you wanting to sing hymns and nonsense. But I don't remember. Anyways, dogs are, so that dog is the dog we have now is a purebred Belgian Malinois, but he's a rescue. So somebody had a male and a female Malinois. And for those of you who don't know, when you have a male and a female, they make puppies, right? If you have kids that are listening to this podcast with you, you're welcome. Start the conversation. Birds and the bees. Here we go. But they already couldn't handle the 2 dogs together. And then all of a sudden 8 puppies came out, and they just dropped off these dogs at the vet and said, we don't want them, and walked away. And Belgian Malinois are, first off, they're crazy dogs, right? You need to have they're wonderful. So and I got it for $400, right? Which was the cost of like the shots and all the stuff. And now like to give you guys an idea of how, of how crazy these dogs are, for those who don't know, first off, they will literally, you can strap them to your back and jump out of an airplane with them, and they'll have the oxygen mask on and everything. You can watch it happen online. They can climb up trees and go get bad guys, jump through windows. We used to sit out in the back. So I had a Dutch Shepherd when I was in Afghanistan, and you'd sit out in the back and wait for a bad guy to come running out and just release your dog on a bad guy and like have them go chase him down. Like, I mean, the dogs are insane what they can do. So what this one does is I'll go in the backyard, and at first we thought he hated the 4-wheeler. And then I realized, no, he is excited by the 4-wheeler, right? I didn't realize till just now, but we talk about, people often talk about like being afraid and being excited, right? And how all it takes from being afraid is your mouth being down to being excited, your mouth being up. And really that's the only difference is how you think about it, because they're so close. Your body reactions are so close to the same as afraid and excited, but he'll like bite on the tires and that dog will chase the four-wheeler forever. Like he just loves it. He'll just run and run and run and run. And people are like, oh, I can walk him around the block. I'm like, no, you don't understand what you're getting your hands into when you get a Belgian Malinois. Like it doesn't matter, rain or shine, I have to take him in the backyard and fly around with the four-wheeler and he will chase me and chase me and chase me until he's exhausted. And then I have to do it again in the afternoon. But man, oh man, I love it.
One of our employees has one and they're the best.
Oh, they're so wonderful. But I can't lay in bed with them. It's not going to happen. I'm not doing that.
All right. So you brought something up that I wanted to tap into because it's cool. And this is just, so I've been doing breath work for 5 years now. And breath works, the concept is you over oxygenate your blood, right? So you're taking in more air than you normally do. You can do breath holds for 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, no problem. You don't feel like you need more air. You don't feel like you need to let more air out. Like it's just, you can just be. It's a great way to get into different altered states, much like psilocybin and different plant medicines could do. But the FAA approves of breath work. I don't recommend doing breath work before flying or while flying. Don't do that. But I was in a session in December, just last month, and I've done a lot of breath work. I'm a breath work practitioner. I went to the training last year. And I'm in this session and I'm breathing, and most of my work has been around grief. Like this life, I've lost a ton of friends. I happen to befriend the most interesting humans on the planet, people who jump off of buildings and cliffs and people who fly air shows and people who do really cool things that can kill them. So I've lost a lot of friends. And obviously my brother and my sister's a quadriplegic from a skydiving accident. Just a lot of trauma, a lot of things that I had to grieve. I'm sure you have very similar stories, from your experience in the Air Force. But I'm in this breath work and I'm going through the grief wall. And I could feel it coming, and I could feel this wave of sadness that's going to come out of me. The next thing I knew, I was laughing. Now, mind you, I'm in a room with 120 guys in it, right? So you're hearing all sorts of different experiences. Guys are crying, moaning, screaming, slapping, right? And I am laughing with the most pure joy, just bliss pouring out of me, could not stop laughing. And all of a sudden, boom, grief's back. And then I laughed again. And it was this moment where I realized that every time I'm that close to grief, every time I'm in it, bliss is right next door. And it's so close. And the difference is it's conscious. Can you make the conscious shift? That's what I love about breath work and all these different somatic modalities is like you can learn to have your nervous system tap into the depths of despair. And the next moment, tap into just the pure white hot energy of joy. And they're the same, just like you said. It depends on where your mouth is. And that is the lesson that I keep being brought back to is those moments of hardship could also be a moment of pure bliss the next moment.
For sure. And it's, I'll tell you, like combat's one of those times where you find that, right? Hardship, like followed by pure bliss and the excitement that you get, the adrenaline that you get and all the stuff. And it's just it's all a perspective on how you look at what you're going through, doesn't mean you don't have to work through stuff later, but it's part of the process, it's all part of it. But, how do you talk to your, well, actually, before I go into that, cause that was, there's something I really wanted to hit on. You mentioned before we started recording that you homeschooled for 12 years. Is that right? Yeah. So you went from homeschooling for 12 years, jumping into an Acton. I homeschool. I'm on my second year, as I was telling you before the recording, but, how did you kind of decide, you and your wife decide to do homeschool? And then how did it transition as you were going through? Because like running business while homeschooling, not exactly the easiest thing to do. One of those ask me how I know situations. So tell me kind of how that came to be. When you guys got married, you were already staying busy and then you were starting a new thing. And then like, okay, now all of a sudden we're going to start homeschooling our kids. Tell me, kind of walk me through that.
So I'll actually start further back. Before my older sister and my wife's older brother were born, our moms went to Lamaze class in the same town at the same time and became friends. At the time, homeschooling was illegal. A few years later, my wife and I were both born. And a few years after that, both of our mothers started homeschooling. At the time in Polk County, there were 5 families that homeschooled in all of Central Florida, in fact, because it was completely illegal. That group is now over 5,000 families, last I heard. So my mom and her mom started a homeschool group. We were homeschooled all the way through. ironically, neither one of us have a diploma or a GED. We both dropped out in our own way. She finished school but never walked or anything like that. We never had any sort of intimacy or even interest until our early 20s. I made a joke on Facebook. We decided we wanted to go on a date to freak our moms out. Turns out that that was a mistake. Not really. It was wonderful because we by the second date, I knew she was the one, and we were married 9 months later. We knew we wanted to homeschool because we wanted the freedom. We both lived to travel, experiencing life in different places with interesting people was kind of our high. So we wanted to homeschool, and she'd always planned on being a homeschool mom. That was her goal. It was her dream. It turns out that it's not. After she got there, she realized that homeschooling wasn't what she wanted. Our first child was, his first year was unbelievably brutal. He had colic, he had acid reflux, he didn't sleep for more than 2 hours at a stretch for the first 9 months. And my wife was really depressed. So it came to me with a startup business and all this other stuff going on to stay up all night. And it was just a really hard time. But we bit the bullet. We could do hard things. She homeschooled all three of them up until 2020. November of 2020, I got a phone call that no one wants to get, which was one of our employees was leaving to go work for a competitor who used to be my business partner. And she gave us 5 whole days notice. And at this point, I'm already reeling. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that happened in that business with that partner that ended up having us in court for years, and IRS and all this messy stuff that you find out and do whistleblower acts on and realize it's a mess. Long story short, it's a mess. But I'm like, how am I going to find a warehouse manager with 5 days notice? And then I looked at my wife and she goes, I think I could do it. So my wife went to work and I came home in 2020. She's running our warehouse and I've got 3 kids to homeschool. So I researched all the best iPad homeschool programs, and it took me a very short amount of time to realize that I'm not a good homeschool dad. So it turns out when we actually got the kids in school and they were evaluated, they're like, oh, actually, their reading scores are way above average. Yeah, they should probably learn how to do math, but they were in a great place. And when we come to visit Austin the first time as a family, several of our friends that are front row dads had their kids at Acton. And when we got to know these kids, they're just the most sensational people. You're going to go bonus. Do you know Seth Daly? So we were at Seth's house and his daughters are just unbelievable humans. And we're like, we want to know more about this. And we'd had a lot of childhood trauma, both my wife and I, so we didn't really trust adults with our kids. At that point, I think that my parents had kept them a few times. My wife's parents had kept them a few times. It was very hard for us to trust anyone. But we felt such a sense of trust for the family that runs this Acton. And the kids were excited. They were excited for the adventure. So that was the transition. And I will say they have changed so remarkably. And a lot of it's, the family board meetings, these different things we talk about. But my last board meeting was with my daughter on Sunday of last week. And it's 2 days before my 39th birthday. We go ice skating and then she chooses the adventure. She chooses where we eat, right? There's no phones except for taking pictures. And we sit down to eat at this deli that she wanted to share with me because she'd been with her grandparents and I have never been. And unwrap her sandwiches. And she starts asking me questions. And for 3 years we've done these and I ask them questions. Most of the time the answer is, oh, I don't know, right? And now she's asking, Dad, when you're in your meetings, what do you think about? Well, what kind of meetings? My coaching meetings or like the meetings I'm having with front row dads or like when I'm working in the business? She says, like, your coaching meetings. I was like, well, usually I'm just trying to be really present so I can ask better questions and understand where people are coming from. Huh. I do that too sometimes. And just right on into more questions. And it was like an hour-long conversation where she's interviewing me and I'm like, who is this 9-year-old and what have you done? Like with the 7-year-old or the 6-year-old who started this process. And it's just beautiful to see that growth because it's not just from us. I think a big part of my realization in the last few years has been, I thought that if I was a really good dad, it'd be enough. If my wife was a really good mom, it'd be enough. And now in community with all these wonderful people, I'm realizing that when I watched my 13-year-old a few weeks ago, Ryan Moran's another front row dad, great guy, wrote a fantastic book, runs capitalism.com. He's actually the guy whose podcast I was on a year ago that started this whole thing for me. And Ryan and I were having pizza with our families. And my son, I told you about how we can smack talk. My son decided to smack talk Ryan. And he did it very disrespectfully. And Ryan turned to him and with a stern voice said, "You will not speak to me or any other adult in my presence that way." And my son's eyes get big and he kind of rocks back. And I didn't have an opportunity to inject here, by the way. This is like, this happened, and they reflexively responded. And mind you, Ryan and I have had the conversation that, because our kids were together a lot. I'm like, hey, you can always parent my kids. He said, oh, you can always parent my kids. I'm like, just don't beat them. We'll talk. Aside from beating them, we're fine. And then he reflected the most beautiful seeing of my son's gift, of who my kid is. He disciplined him, and then he built him up. And my son's reaction to me smashing him over the head of don't do that would have been one thing. But instead, it's another man, and he's not once has he had that instinct to be that cocky little head, crap head again. It takes a village.
Yeah.
And this is my village. We found a group of people who align in values, so we get to have a village that raises our family together. And I just think that that's the most beautiful, beautiful thing.
So the biggest part I want so I chatted about this with one of my really good buddies, Jamie Gruber, on my podcast, where we talked about, and it was a big thing going on in the political world at that point of talking about how, all the teachers were like, your kids are our responsibility. No. Like, my kids are my responsibility. They're not your responsibility. And if my kids are raised by a village, it's the village I daggum choose. It is not by you. I did not choose you to raise my kid. I chose you to teach my kid, and that is it. I chose you to teach him how to do math, and that is it. But when you're surrounding yourself, again, with like-minded, like-hearted people who have the same values and alignment, the way you just worded that is the village that I am fine with my kids being raised in.
And what I love about it, by the way, is we vote differently. We have different religious structures and beliefs, and none of those things come into play when he's looking at family.
Yeah.
None of those people are trying to convince my kids to join their religion or trying to tell me how I should vote. They're just people who have families, and that's what matters.
And the idea of raising the kids, raising the family is what actually matters, right? So, and that matters to all of you guys in the same way. So I love that. That's, I'm really glad you said it the way you did, because, it takes a village is one thing, but no. It takes a village that you create, right?
Absolutely.
And it's one of the things I love about the homeschool side is I've been really trying to, I say that in one way, but in another way, I don't do a good enough job with it, but I want to curate their environment to be the environment that I think is best for them to grow up in. The world is the world, and I'm going to expose them to everything that goes on in the world, which is a crazy place. But that doesn't mean that they need to live in it full time. They need to live in a place that teaches them, again, growth and how to be wise and how to communicate and how to do all that stuff. And be a good man. And as I'm now raising a little girl who's 1.5 years, how to be a wonderful young woman.
Buddy, that journey.
Boy, it's going to be crazy.
Having the youngest be the first daughter.
Yeah.
They're just magic. They're magic in the most infuriating, powerful, awesome, terrible ways. Like, they really are. Yeah, I love that relationship.
And watching my boys with her as well is so much fun, because they're like her little security team, and they love her so much. And at first, she was just not a big fan of the now 6-year-old Rourke. She would because he wanted to help smother her so much all the time, and she was like, nah, no. And now they just have this, she's constantly pick me up and run me around the house, and they just have so much fun together, and it's a blast to watch. I can't wait for it to continue. So many parents talk to me about how they don't want their kids to grow up, and I refuse to have that feeling, because I love watching every step of it, that I want them to continue to grow up, if for no other reason than I want them the heck out of my house and give me grandkids, right? And they can't do that if they stay little, right?
Well, that is the other benefit of putting the kids in school. Second honeymoon, dude. 100%. Second honeymoon. If you've homeschooled for a long time and suddenly your kids are not at your house for 6-7 hours a day, it's a whole new world. What a delight. Just saying.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's valid. No. So I don't know what that's like, because my wife, again, still works all day. She's working 14 hours a day until she retires. So I can't wait for that. But that's going to change.
Soon.
That's going to be a game changer for sure. Yes. Very soon. By the time this comes out, it'll be even sooner, right? Because this will be 3 more months before it comes out. It should be super close then. But now, where was I?
You're buying an RV that has a bedroom door. That's going to be the vision.
Yes, that's going to have to happen for sure. And I completely lost one of the questions I had. This has been a lot of fun. So I want to flip around, because I often like to ask, based off of all the stuff we've been talking about, what sort of things have popped up during this conversation that you want to dig into more, that excite excite you that maybe we haven't even touched on yet that you want to kind of chat about some more? Who wants to look at me? Let's be honest.
It's your experience, man. Like what do you think is holding you back from those close relationships in your daily life? Why do you feel like you hold yourself to such a high level where you quote unquote have to work, where you want to work? What are those things that are creating resistance in you from being free? And I say this because 5 years ago I was a slave to my business. Like it's probably not culturally acceptable to say that, but I was. Like my ego needed the work in order to feel like I mattered, and my belief was that the relationships I had there were enough to sustain me, and they really weren't, because it was an employee relationships. And at that point we had around 30 employees, and they're wonderful people, and I'm still friends with many of them who don't even work there anymore. But it's I had to take a hard look at myself as to why I was so obsessed. And you talked about the $100 million business or valuation, like that, those things are good, but they don't define you. And if we're in that place where it's defining us, like, what's that say about us? I guess that if you're asking me to go back to something, that's what I'm most interested in is you.
Yeah. So for me, I'd say that there's been a lot of transition over the years and how I view a lot of this stuff. So the way I started this off, so I was a paycheck to paycheck guy for a very long time. Like most enlisted military guys, I had no idea what I was doing. And then I married my wife, and she had this magical thing called a savings account that I had never heard of before. And I said, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why do you have that? Like, you get paid every 2 weeks. So by this time I was in college. I wasn't in the military anymore when we got married. So then I marry her, and she's in the military still. And I'm like, you get paid every 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks to spend your paycheck until you get another one. Like, why are you saving money? This doesn't make any sense to me at all. Right. And this goes back again, like if anybody hasn't read, and if you haven't read them, which maybe you have, maybe you haven't, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, the way we think about money often comes from the way that we saw money treated and talked about when we were younger. So like, her mom was born and raised in Cuba, right? So what she was taught and raised is like, you hoard that nonsense, so she would do that, and she didn't know what to do with it afterwards. Like, she didn't know how to invest it or anything. So she did a little bit of investing with the military's version of a 401k, the TSP. But other than that, like, that was it, and me, I just spent money because I had it. Like, they gave it to me, and there was a Taco Bell that I lived right around the corner from Taco Bell. What the heck was I supposed to do? I rode my motorcycle to Taco Bell. I ate, I rode my motorcycle home. Like, exactly. Come on. Like, what are we supposed to do? Cheesy gordita crunch. It's gotta happen. Anyways, I'll try to fast forward to this story. Is once I started to realize that, there was more out there, and there was things I could do to earn money. Like, my wife had said, hey, like, we should look at buying real estate. I ended up saying, okay, we're going to go buy apartment buildings. So that's what I started doing, is going and buying apartment buildings with folks.
No, you bought a 62 unit apartment building for your first unit. That's insanity.
Very first one. Yes. The only property I'd ever bought before that was the house we lived in before we moved to Japan. And then we sold it. We sold it. Right. It was a bit crazy.
Did you just like fixing toilets? Is that your thing? Is like, I want to repair 40 AC units at once.
No, I don't deal with the toilets. I don't deal with the tenants. I don't deal with the trash. But you have a property management company that does that. I just deal with the property management company, and sometimes that's worse than toilets. But I'd rather go plunge a toilet. Anyways, I had gone to all these things. So my wife was totally supportive of me doing all of this. Well, at first she wasn't, because she had no idea. She's like, what do you mean I'll buy an apartment building? And I was like, no, this is, and then I explained some stuff. She was like, whatever, I trust you, go do it. So then I started doing it, going to conferences, working on my mindset, my thought process, how I'm thinking about things. And I started doing all this growth stuff in my head about where we could go, and never once had the conversation with my wife about what that looked like. Until one day I was like, this is like, what do you mean you don't want this? This is what we're growing towards. And she's like, I don't want that. And I was like, but I wrote it down. What do you mean you don't want that? Holy crap, I wrote that down. That has nothing to do with what she wants. Like, I didn't bring her into it at all. And then finally, I scrapped everything. I said, I need to redo all of this because I'm going to end up, and this is one of the reasons I started this podcast, is I'm going to end up being just like all those military guys I talked about before, where I'm chasing building a business instead of being a present, loving father and husband. So I scrapped all of that. And I said, okay, I'm not chasing this. I'm not chasing the 4,000 units. I built out I need 4,000 units. I need this much income. I need all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. So I scrapped all of it and then started the rebuild. I said, okay, what do you want? And I sat down and started to have a conversation with my wife. How do we want to work this? And so now, honestly, like I'm not looking for a $100 million business. I don't need any of that. I need enough income coming in to let my wife and I and our kids enjoy our life and do what we want to do. So I'm building to do that, to be able to travel the world the way we want to be able to, do all that stuff. But we're still working on my wife kind of knowing what she wants for the future, because all she's been doing is for the last 20 years is what the military has told her to. So if I'm completely honest, I am now looking forward to having some more of those conversations with my wife as she's working on transitioning out. She's in the class right now. Literally, she just sent me a text message saying she's on her way home from it. Her transition class from the military. Like this is like it's a boots to business thing. So they're teaching military members how to do business stuff on the way out, because she's going to be working in the business. She's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never done any of this before. You've been doing it. So now we get to do it together. So I want to know what she wants so that we can build what we want together in the future. If all she wants is an extra $100,000 a year on top of her pension and my stuff that we already have going on, great, let's do that. If she wants all of this other stuff, now granted, I'm going to push a little bit because I like to think a little larger sometimes, but really right now it's in such flux with her getting ready to get out and her finally kind of realizing there's about to be a life on the other side of this military stuff. And that's something that I want. And I try to talk to people about that there's a life on the other side of your business as well. And that's one of the things and you've been talking about it a ton today, and I love it because it's one of those that if all you're thinking about is your business, then you're losing out on so much. And if all you think about is the military, then you're losing out on so much. And if you forget to plan for what happens after those things, you're going to end up lost. Like you're not going to know what to do with yourself. So I don't know if that truly answered your question. It was a long diatribe, but
you did a great job of deflecting it, though. Good job.
Yeah. So let me rewind then.
The deeper part of the question, I guess, really what so many people, especially investors, business leaders, lots of people talk about the money they want to create, the way they want to have whatever that number is. And for most of them, once they reach the number, they just move the goalposts.
Yeah,
and
it just goes to 3x that and then on to something else.
Exactly. And what I've found to be true in my life is that when I define my mission, what I want to be known as when I die, right? What I want my children to carry on after I'm gone, if they choose to pick it up, is not a single business. It's certainly not an aviation business. It's certainly not a media company. Like I love all those things. I'm good at those things, but it's not the heart of what I do or why I do it. And I think there's a certain level of affluence that allows me the freedom to think about this stuff and to direct myself toward my passion and my purpose instead of just on how to make more money. And I'm very blessed. I worked really damn hard to get to the point where I actually can afford to think this way, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people can't fill up their truck, and I get it. I've been there. I've been there too, buddy. But once you reach that level of affluence, I think we have a responsibility, especially to our kids, for them to witness us choose who we are next. And for me, my purpose on this planet is to help myself and others overcome our fears, sit with our demons, and become present with who we're meant to be. Like, that's it. All of my companies do that in one way or another. Sometimes it seems tangentially, like you wouldn't think that an aircraft racing series would do that, but it does. It helps people challenge themselves. It helps them go through some scary stuff. It can be a little bit rocky and rowdy, but it all has purpose. So I guess the deeper question is the two parts. One, how can you prioritize friendships? And two, what purpose do you want your kids to know about you? That what your work is doing is bringing great purpose. I have a friend, JP. JP has a phenomenal podcast and a phenomenal business. He has a real estate fund worth over $1 billion. He has a fantastic business, real estate investing, multifamily homes, thousands of doors, all the things you've talked about. But that's not his purpose. That facilitates his purpose, which is creating equality in housing and allowing families to have deep communities within apartment buildings that don't exist otherwise, right? That funds his nonprofit. It allows him to show up for himself and for his family in a way that isn't just about the ego and the money, right? So I'd love to know purpose, and I'd love to know and I am that annoying friend who will text you to keep up with you. But I'd love to know, like, where else can you show up in your life for those friendships? So you have friendships, but dude, the number of times you've told me you're busy, and I'm going to air your dirty laundry. Like, we booked this in October, right? Your next availability is April. That they're building your schedule in such a way that you're so busy, or you're the most protective, like, awesome, great job at protecting your time. I don't know which one it is. We just met, but when you ask me what I'm interested in the conversation, I'm interested in the people I'm talking to more than I am interested in me. So that's where I go with it.
So as far as the podcast goes, I only record 1 day a week. So it fills up quick because I ask for 2 referrals from everybody who comes in, and I email all of them and they book it out. So it works out well for me. But what is interested more for me is, like, one of the guys that just walked through the door is how can I be a more present dad? How can I show up for them? I want to teach them. What's up, buddy? Sure, bud. I want to teach these guys what showing up means, like how to be present with each other, how to communicate well, how to build business while still growing a family. That is extreme, because I enjoy building business stuff and helping do all of that, which is one of the reasons I tell you that I don't know if I'll ever stop. Not to mention, I as a Christian guy who does what he can to understand what the Bible says, even though that's a struggle from time to time. I don't see anywhere in there that talks about retirement, and I don't want to stop. I enjoy doing it. And as long as I'm enjoying it, then I'll keep doing it. And when I stop enjoying it, then I'll stop doing it. But I want to build a family and a business that can commingle, that can work together, that they can see what it means to honor your employees. They can see what it means to give back to your community. They can see what it means to be engaged and involved. But that it doesn't mean that it comes at that they don't come at the cost of it, right? Like, they're not the cost to me being able to do all of that. And I want to show that a bunch of other dads and a bunch of other entrepreneurs, that you're able to do both of them. And there are seasons where it's tough, right? There are seasons where you're in growth and it's hard and the family sacrifices. And there are seasons where the business doesn't touch it. You're on vacation in Alaska for a month and don't open your computer, right? And so why is it that I want to do that? I guess for multiple reasons. One, because I want to go back to what I talked about with my dad. I want to always be here. I want every sports event that they go to, that I'm able to get to it, that they know that Dad's always there. I'm a moment's notice away. All I got to do is ask at any point. They can ask me anything. They can talk to me about anything. They can be on my lap in the middle of a podcast if they want to. They can, change my voice to a megaphone, apparently. I don't know. He knows right where all the buttons are. I don't even know which ones are which.
This is children, man.
Man, oh man. He knows exactly which color to push for each one of these things. I'm going to change them all so he doesn't know what they are next. But to me, it's not necessarily about the number. The number it provides the opportunity. It's not something that I'm not chasing the number. I'm chasing the opportunity the number allows me. So if I can schedule myself, like maybe after this 4 months of driving around in a camper or 3 months of driving around the camper, I go, well, like as a family, we just go, no, dude, this is where it's at. We've making enough money. We're doing enough stuff. Do I stink or what? Why are you sniffing me? Jeez, kid. Like, we're making enough money. We're enjoying time as a family. Like, this is all we need. And who knows? I don't know what that's going to look like, because I don't know what tomorrow brings with my wife retiring. So
You're in a valley of uncertainty right now.
Aren't we for sure? Again, I don't think I deflected the question this time.
No, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. So if I were to ask you, buddy, since you're sitting on my lap, what do you think life means to me? If you were to say, my dad thinks life is, what would it be?
With us, I think you think life is cuckoo crazy.
Life is cuckoo crazy. You are definitely right. I definitely think life is cuckoo crazy with you guys. And we represent that well as a family. Yeah. But yeah, love it. But yeah. Oh, now here comes the other guy. What's up, Rocksters? They're still in there. Just at the time of this recording, it's 3:46 in the afternoon, and both of my kids are still in pajamas. So
this shows you're doing it right, man.
Great,
you're doing it right.
Insight into homeschooling. They're still in pajamas. They slept in a fort that they built out in the living room. Yeah. So, and it's Christmas pajamas, and it's not Christmas anymore at all.
I'm not wearing pajamas.
No, you're wearing Marvel pajamas. Oh man, this just took a turn. This podcast just took a turn.
This podcast has just improved greatly.
Okay. Yeah. And the censoring and all right. Lovely.
See, with a head of hair like that, you should never wear a hat. Come on now.
Yeah. I shouldn't cover it up, right? Look at this. As long as you don't look at me from the back, because back there is where the bald spot is. We don't need to be showing that off. So.
Oh man.
But no, I strive to be a more involved dad. And oftentimes it's been at the sacrifice of the company as opposed to the sacrifice of the family. And that's, I guess that's good. That's good. As long as, as long as I'm still able to earn enough money to keep the family moving. So,
well, and maybe someday buy a big enough airplane. You guys could go travel the world in that.
Yes. Do you guys think we should buy an airplane?
Yes.
Yeah, they like flying. They like flying. So my Adam drew me an airplane. It was like I don't know, maybe like an F-15. I was going to go get the picture of it. Maybe like an F-15 or something like that. F-16. I don't remember what he drew, but it says on there, don't forget to go flying. Because he knows that I don't do it nearly as much as I would like to. So he drew that and put it on my poster board that I have here in the house.
That's awesome.
Oh, there it is.
I've got an empty hangar in Lake Wales. Just saying, nice.
Yeah, and that was like a year and a half ago. You drew that, something like that.
3rd grade, yeah.
Yep, 3rd grade. So, all right, hop down, Rourke. I'm gonna be almost done. Almost done. Almost done. Get up. This is the benefit of YouTube. You're not listening on YouTube. All you're hearing is the screaming. You're not seeing the kid stuck on me, huh? Yeah.
Missed opportunities if they're not on YouTube.
Very much so. But to me, this is why I work from home. Like it's super stressful sometimes. It's exhausting sometimes because they're in here all the time. But man, oh man, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
No, 100%. My kids are about to be here from school in about 15 minutes. And generally speaking, if they're not at school and I'm on a meeting, they're stuck to me. At least my daughter. She's always stuck to me, which I love.
Okay. Okay. Nobody can hear anything. All right. Hop out, boys. I'll be out in a minute. Okay. Love you guys.
Oh, dude, that was awesome.
Crazy kids.
Cuckoo crazy.
Yes. Cuckoo crazy kids. Yes. Crazy for Cocoa Puffs, as they say. But man, this was an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed having a conversation with you. And I do hope that I did not dodge your question.
No, it was great.
Thank
you.
So,
I really appreciate it. I love to see the clarity. And then, like, that's what I've realized in my life is if you don't have a mentor or a coach, you're missing out on so much in life. And I have lots of different masterminds, different groups I've been a part of, or I'm still a part of in some cases. But I will always have a mentor or coach, someone that can push me on questions like that, because whenever they ping on something that I say, I'm like, ooh, I want to think through that further. And that's when I heard you say that, I'm like, ooh, I want to ping on that further. And I still want to push you on the friends thing, but we can do that round 2.
Yeah, the friends thing is I actually talked about that today when I told you I was on my GoPod call. I was chatting with them about that the only friends I have are basically GoBundance guys. And which isn't a bad thing. I actually took over our local chapter here, the Tampa chapter. I just recently took that over because I want to be more involved and I want to build those connections. We were at one meeting once, and I told them, so we've done. I forgot what the heck it was called, but one of the profile type things that work really great for business stuff. But it talks about your logic versus emotion, and I told you I'm like Spock, and I was a 10 on logic, and like not anywhere on the emotion schedule, and that's 90% of the time where my brain is at. I am super duper logical, and they asked me like, what is that like? And I said, you guys really don't want to know, like, and they're like, no, really. I said, honestly, it makes it tough to have relationships. I said, because I could walk out of here, and I'm saying this vulnerably to you all. I said, I could walk out of here and never see a single one of you guys again, and it would not hurt my feelings. And that's not a place I want to be. I don't think that's a healthy place to be. I don't like being in that position, but I've trained myself over so many years of all of this stuff that's just the way that at the moment, that's the way that my brain analyzes it and walls itself off to protect myself from loss. It's like, okay, well, I don't have to worry about moving. I don't have to worry about any of this stuff because I could forget everything about all of these people, and it's okay. Unless it's my wife and kids. Those are the only ones that I really have that core emotional attachment to. So that is something that I'm working on, and will be getting better at. But I've got to be very intentional about it. But I don't want to fake it. So that's where I really struggle. Is like I feel like I have to fake it to start, just so I can get the motions going, and then maybe eventually it'll become authentic. But I who knows? I'm going to do what I can to expose that part of me.
I'll say from personal experience, as you find the right people, it becomes easy. It becomes easy to let them see you. And once you have someone that sees your vulnerability, sees the truth of you, you can't just walk away. And because you're carrying theirs too. And it's a beautiful thing. And I could list off 2 years ago, I could have listed off maybe 6 people who I was close with. I was in a room in December for Fatherhood Dad's Live, and there's 120 guys, and 80 of which I've had deep conversations, and 20 I've gone really deep, and 10 who take a bullet for me, or I take a bullet for them. And that's just a wild thing. But it's just because I that's been my intention. I wanted a community. That was like, I built the business. I've got the family relationship. Now I want community. That's just the next stage for me. And then to me, that was what was holding back my success, because community is currency, right? If you have a strong community, you'll never be broke again. You can't, because your friends will always pull you up. And so that's the beauty of places like Abundance or Fatherhood Dads or EO or YPO or Vistage. It's these opportunities to go deep with people, to build deep relationships that matter, because they'll support you in the times when you need it most. And vice versa. You get to do it for them. And that's the gift we have as we, build wealth. It's like, okay, now we get to give so much more of it away. So, dude, thank you for answering. I appreciate you.
Yep, I definitely don't want to leave you hanging on the friends part. I left you hanging twice on it, so I'm glad I was able to pull it back in. But Eric, it was an absolute pleasure getting to chat with you a little bit, getting to know you a little bit. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well. If folks wanted to reach out to you, whether it's for your coaching, whether it's because they want to learn more about your STOL or your other aircraft business, what is the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
Yeah, ericfarewell.com. There's an email there. You can contact me. You're welcome to find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, wherever else. If I don't add you as a friend, it's because we haven't met in person. Don't be offended. But I look forward to catching up. I have a phenomenal team in my personal business as well as all the businesses I own. So if you have interest in doing either one-on-one coaching or group coaching with myself or one of my other coaches, consultants, whatever you want to call them. I hate calling it coaching because everyone's a coach now. Yeah. And it is coaching, but it's also like of the clients I have right now, 50% of them have increased their business by at least double in the first 3 months. But we don't talk about how to make more money. It's just it just happens when you're getting more aligned and you get more focused on your vision. So yes, it's coaching. It's also consulting. We build businesses and we build you. And that's my whole goal, is to have a healthier, better world. I also have a book called Farewell to Normal on Amazon, and I would be really honored to interact with anyone who's listening to this podcast, because you sounds like you probably have the same interests I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it. Please, everybody, reach out to Eric. Well, maybe not everybody. Well, maybe everybody. I don't have a huge listenership at the moment, so
not yet.
But please, everybody, reach it. Not yet, exactly. Keep it on going. So, everybody, please reach out to Eric. Eric, thank you very much for jumping on and dealing with the hecticness of kids climbing on my head and dogs barking in the background and all the craziness that's going on. And there's one of them back in here again, putting the thumbs up. But please, everybody, like, subscribe, reach out to Eric, and we will see everybody on the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening to the BizDad Podcast. We hope you found some value in your time here with us, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's show, please subscribe and share so you and your friends won't miss our upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Rumble, where we continue these discussions and share more valuable content. Be the dad you know you need to be, and run your business in a way you're proud to share with your kids. Keep crushing it.